conversations. So, what I was hoping we could start with was anybody who's had the words adrenal fatigue and who told them that. Like, when I have a patient come in saying, I want a workup for adrenal fatigue, my first part is to say, where did you come from? Where did you come up with that language? And
Yeah.
where is that, what are the symptoms that you're coming to the clinic with? When most of my patients come into the clinic and they say, Dr. Boz, I think I have adrenal fatigue. What I usually find is they've been suffering, they've been tired, they are not finding the health that they want, and either they've been reading women's magazines, because that word is very common in women's magazines, or they've gone to a practitioner who, with all the good intentions, has used a term that doesn't really have a diagnosis inside the medical world. So it becomes this clash of language, and the patient can sometimes get caught in the middle of what does that really mean to me and what am I going to do about it. So let's just remind you or ask you, Jennifer, what do you think your adrenal glands do?
I hope they probably protect me from that flight or fight mode.
Mhm.
And mine tend to always be in the fight mode. So they get worn out.
Yeah, yeah, adrenaline, that's where we get that word. The
Yeah.
adrenaline gland is part of the adrenal gland.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to remember a test question on about the adrenal glands and the anatomy is they're organs of hormones, and the hormones get sweeter as you go in. So I think of it as salt, sugar, and sex are the three hormones that are inside your adrenal glands. So the way you control your blood pressure is actually from part of the hormones that are on the outer layer. That talks a lot to your kidneys. Adrenal it has the word renal in it, and it means that it's right next to your renal, which is your kidneys. But that hormone of keeping your blood pressure controlled is one of the hormones from your adrenal gland. Sugar is the next one, which is actually called, so you've got aldosterone, you've got cortisol, and people have heard of that hormone. We've talked about that one, a very stress hormone. And then you've got some of your reproductive hormones that come out of the most central part of your adrenal glands.
So that's why you call it the salt, sugar, sex.
Sex.
It's like
Yep.
the 3S.
Yes.
Let's just call it what it is.
Yes, and those hormones are in layers in this very delicate and really, I can remember in gross anatomy, the adrenals were just this very little bitty tiny, like all this stuff can't come out of such a tiny little part, can it? But it is, again, one of those hormones one of those organs where the hormones leave, and then it does all this work. And when it's not working right, lots of bad things happens. They stand up, they get lightheaded. So they're known for being like, just, I think of them as weak. They feel a weakness. And what I think of when I'm looking at an adrenal, especially, it's almost always the patient will come in and saying, I think I have adrenal fatigue. Can you do a workup? Can you fix me? And, today I would do something much different than I did probably 5 years ago before I really implemented the process of the ketogenic diet. What I used to start with was actually, they come in, they're overly stressed. If you could do a cortisol measurement over the 24 hours, which is expensive and a waste of time. But if you could do that, they would be making way too much cortisol. They're in a constant stressed out mode. And what does that cortisol do? But raises your blood sugar. And so then they've got this pre-diabetes or the constant need for glucose that they're chasing. And then they'll usually keep reading that their sex drive is low. They just, that's the last thing I want to talk about. That I don't care at all about that. I'm so tired. I just can't seem to get my energy. And yet they have all the markers of high stress. And so today, 5 years ago, my first step was, remember that sleep protocol that we talk about with John? I would instantly march back and say, you know what we can do with a few nights of really hearty sleep is we can reset your body's panic mode that's constantly producing the cortisol. They're usually not sleeping well. From depression to anxiety to worries to memory issues, they're usually struggling with some form of that, whether or not they recognize some memory problems or not. But that kind of mental health is is fragile. Like they're not resilient. They can't cope. They're just at the edge. And then what happens after they do a little sleep protocol is there are a lot of things that get better. And so people say, well, can't you just check a blood test? And I'm like, if I were to do this today, when they come in today, and I rarely get this anymore because I don't know if the word is out that if you say adrenal fatigue, I'm going to make you sleep for 3 days. So maybe they don't say that
I don't, you
anymore.
know what though? If you say that to some of the moms I know, they'd be like, hallelujah, let me sleep for 3 days. Somebody else take the reins.
Yeah, in fact, I have a product I've used a few times where it is that mom that's just
Yeah.
she's overstressed, and I will say, "We're gonna do your protocol. You're gonna go to the hotel room, and it's
Yeah.
across the street from where you live, but this is the timeout that I need to give you a reset,
Yeah.
that if we're gonna really fix things, there's a whole bunch of layers that need to improve, but you're gonna do a lot better with a few nights of really good sleep." So there's the beginning that says, can I do a blood test? But what I do now is I would have them check their morning glucoses, their morning ketones, and just show them how volatile their blood glucoses are. It
So
becomes this battle of saying, no, 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 I see so much when you walk through, and I know these symptoms.
yeah,
But
let me just stress the importance of what you're saying, because sometimes I don't think people understand that they have the power. Instead of visiting you in your office, paying a copay, like they have so much power in their own hands that if you can just get yourself a glucose monitor and do what Dr. Boz is telling you, take your ketone levels, take your glucose levels, and by those numbers, you can change your makeup. You can change what's happening, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful, like the empowerment is so far beyond what what I would have hoped to be doing at this stage of my career. Like as you get into 20 years of practicing patients, patients come in with adrenal fatigue, and all I would see is, okay, we might be better in 6 months. And if they get a support group, they get a husband that's the kids, all this stuff has to line up for them to really improve their health. There's a comment by Gloria Gross, which it helps me bring back the adrenal fatigue, because she says that I was diagnosed by my licensed practitioner with adrenal fatigue, and my primary care doctor said, go learn about the ketogenic diet. And so I really think what you hear me hesitate by saying the words adrenal fatigue, because it is a process or a syndrome that is common in the women's magazines. It's common in the practitioners that are in the relations of patients. But when you get to the can I do a blood test to prove this, you're going to hear some pushback. And it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that the label is different in my world versus your world. And I don't care what the label is. The patient is suffering. Usually they are fatigued, that they know that their blood pressure goes up and down, that they do not have good energy. Almost always when I would do sleep studies on them, their brains would not sink into that heavy layer of sleep where it repairs. And then in addition, now that I've become an advocate of even just the glucose checks, but also that time where you did that 2 weeks of a continuous glucose monitor, just giving a patient a prescription for that, saying, I know you don't want to poke your finger, but give me 2 weeks of your phone measuring your sugar. You're going to be amazed at how high that sugar gets at different stages in the day, when you get upset, when you don't sleep well, and when you don't have the barrier of poking your finger, especially when you're new to this.
Yeah.
It is enlightening how much they learn about their own system. And Gloria is right that when the amount of heaviness that I would feel when a patient comes in with adrenal fatigue, it was related to the fact that it's going to be 6 months before they feel better, and that's if a lot of things go right.
Yeah.
Until I got the ketogenic diet. And I am telling you, one of my favorite tricks when they're really exhausted and they don't have the privilege of 3 days of a timeout sleep process that I would love for them to do.
Yeah.
I will tell them, don't wiggle one little spot, get some exogenous ketones, put them in your system, and watch what happens over 2 weeks. Don't change anything about what you're to do. We're going to get you a continuous glucose monitor, and I'm going to put these ketones in your supplements. And it is amazing what happens in that 2-week process. I can take them from adrenal fatigue to maybe not perfect, but so much better in under 3 to 4 weeks by saying, I'm going to wake up your mitochondria. That sounds like a fancy word, but it's really important for your focus, your immune system, your energy, and your sex hormones. That's the sweetest hormone in the middle of those adrenal glands. They are related to a healthy person does have sex drive. They are interested in their 10 years of marriage doesn't mean no, we don't have sex. It's real. Their hormones are healthy. And I'm profoundly impressed and almost saddened that the years it took me to say, I could have done so much better if I would have started with diet instead of starting with so many blood tests and prescriptions. And again, you look at some of these markers, and we've talked about some of them before, like what is their average blood sugar? Do they have a thyroid problem? Are they anemic? Do they have a low vitamin D? And all of these are the blood tests that kind of create this constellation of the patient their body is wilted from pushing too hard, not having a good balance in life. And oh, by the way, they're eating way too many processed carbohydrates.
And that is what you just explained was exactly me. I was anemic. I had very low vitamin D. I had everything that you just said was exactly me. But what was amazing is the only thing I switched was my diet. I just went keto. I was taking vitamin D, but switching keto, it's like my blood work transformed within a little as 6 months. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing how it switched.
Right. Faster than I could do with a prescription. And I think that's where when people say, what are your supplements, that I bring out this exogenous ketone stuff only because people say, oh, I can't do keto. It's too hard. And really their brain they aren't in the place they want to change all this stuff. That sounds ridiculous that they're going to go through something that doesn't feel good for a few days when they go from high carbohydrates to not. And that process of saying the faster we can get you feeling better. And then these supplements are not, the exogenous ketones are not something I have people on for long term. I want them doing a 2-week challenge, waking up their mitochondria. And then it's amazing because they don't need it. They really don't need the supplement once they get that transition and figuring out the food. So, get the cookbook.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.